Can I have the first slide, please? Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most prayerful salutations at the divine lotus feet of our Lord and Master, Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, but for whom none of us will be here. He is the cause of this institution, of the trust of Prashanti Nilayam, and indeed of this conference. And we're very grateful to the World Heart Federation for choosing India, for choosing Prashanti Nilayam to have this conference as well as the World Heart Day World Heart Day celebrations. To those of you who are coming to Prashanti Nilayam for the first time, as a doctor and as a trustee, I would say welcome to Prashanti Nilayam. Keep visiting Prashanti Nilayam all the time, because for those of us who come regularly, we feel that our batteries get charged every time we come here. And it's not something which is fiction, it's something which we feel every day. And I'm sure in the abode of peace, Prashanti Nilayam translates to abode of peace, as the managing trustee said. You will find a lot of peace here. Can I have the first slide, please?
There's some logistical issue with the laptop. We're just sorting it out.
Do you want my pen drive?
No, sir. It is just there. We'll just sort it out. Just a minute.
Okay. Right. Some technical issue. I have my pen drive if you want. I have my pen drive. If it doesn't work, let me know. Okay. I think it's come. So offering my humble pranams at the divine lotus feet and praying to him to bless this conference. My heartfelt thanks to this conference, to organizers, to Dr. Krishna Rao, Dr. Akshay, and to all the directors of the hospital who worked so hard, the Vice Chancellor who is so much involved in the World Heart Day activities starting tomorrow, and of course to the Managing Trustee for all his support, and all to the trustees and all the delegates who have come, the faculty who have come from all over the world and India, and to the delegates. I'm going to talk about diabetes in Indians and talk about some of the lessons that we have learned about diabetes over the last few years. It's not working. It's not working. Oh yeah. So this was my Kelly West Lecture Award last year at the American Diabetes Association. They actually asked me to talk on this subject at the ADA last year. And it was published in the February issue of Diabetes Care, where all that we have learned over the last 50 years, the US was very keen that South Asian diabetes seems to be a little different. And can you tell us what lessons you have learned, because that is applicable not only just to India and to South Asia, but to many parts of the world. Oh yeah. If you look at the prevalence of diabetes in India, in the 1970s, 1972 actually, as an 18-year-old, I joined my father when I joined first-year medical school. And at that time, a survey was done by the Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR. And the prevalence of diabetes in India at that time was 2% in urban areas and 1% in rural areas. Now, when we talk about 2%, we're talking about people above 20 years of age. Slowly, the prevalence of diabetes went up, but the line that I have drawn there, the green dotted line, is 1991. And that's very significant in India, because that's when the former Prime Minister of India, who was then the Finance Minister of India, Shri Mohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, opened up the economy of India. So when the economy opened up and we allowed foreign investment to come in, there was a sudden increase in the socio-economic status of people, which is very good, of course. So more jobs, people are paid better, and those things are very good. But what actually happened was that the price we paid for it is the diabetes and obesity rates, which also shot up. So you can see the next study which was done, it's now in double figures. It's 11.6. And from then on, there's no looking back. The prevalence of diabetes has been increasing and increasing and increasing. The last city-wide study that we did in Delhi and Chennai was in 2015, 10 years ago. And at that time, it's already reached 25%. Now, what do you mean by 25%? If you take the entire population, these are representative studies of the whole city. So if you take Delhi and Chennai, above 20 years of age, 1 in 4 people have diabetes. Now you may say, well, 3 in 4 don't have diabetes. 20 years of age. If you take 50 years of age, and in the same study, and look at Delhi and Chennai, and the same is true for Hyderabad, which is probably even higher, Bangalore even probably higher, Mumbai, and all the big cities, it is 50%. So 1 in 2. So what does it mean? You stand in a street in Chennai or Delhi and see everybody above 50 years of age, irrespective of socioeconomic status, poor, middle income, high income, 1 in 2 has diabetes, and 25% have pre-diabetes. So 3 out of 4 have either diabetes or pre-diabetes in the cities. Of course, admittedly, in the smaller cities, it is less. In the villages, it is less. But you can see the villages also, it's now gone to 16%. In the INDIAB study, which I'm going to talk to you about now, where the whole country was studied, in rural Kerala, the prevalence of diabetes is actually higher than urban Kerala. So everything is changing. We thought it's a rich man's disease. It isn't a rich man's disease anymore. My father, when I joined him, he used to have a slogan. He said, we have the genes for diabetes, but when you go abroad, you get diabetes because the environment comes in. So he said it's a genetic phenomenon, but the environment actually drives it. A few years ago, we wanted to test this and see, okay, it's taking time. We wanted to test this because at that time, in the US, UK, wherever Indians went, if it was 4% in India, it was 10% there or 12% there. Now that it's increased so much in India, I wanted to test whether my father's hypothesis is still correct. So we collaborated with the University of California and with Northern Chicago in the Masala study in the US. Using the same criteria, we looked at our Chennai data, and you can see it's continuously moving. Something wrong with the, oops, it's just going on and on. Okay, let's come back here. So in red is the prevalence of diabetes in Chennai, and in yellow is the prevalence in Indians, migrant Indians in California and northern Chicago. So it's already higher in Chennai now, so it's no longer a migrant Indian phenomenon. So in 40 years, the clock has come a full circle, and we have more diabetes now in India. At that time, my daughter joined me. And she said, Papa, why are you studying all this Chennai and Delhi and then saying it is India? I said, what do you want to do? She said, study the whole country. I said, who's going to study the whole country? You know, India is like a subcontinent. You can't study it. She said, leave it to me. I'll do it. So we went to the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, and I said, this crazy girl has a crazy idea. She wants to study the whole country. Who will be able to do that? I'm telling the DG of ICMR. He said, it's a great idea. We'll fund it. If you can do it, we'll fund it. So that's how the ICMR India diabetes study was done, the largest epidemiological study ever done in the world on diabetes, covering every state in the country, every union territory in the country, every island in the country, including Andaman and Nicobar Islands, is also completed. So that's the study. It was published in Lancet in June 2023. So what the study showed, that we now have 101 million people with diabetes in India, 136 million people with pre-diabetes in India. Now, if you add both this together, 237 million people, there are not too many countries in the world which have 237 million people. So whenever we hear people in Europe telling us that, oh, you should give total care to everybody with diabetes, and we are able to give it free of cost, 237 million people, it's not easy to give care. But we are not worried so much about the numbers of people with diabetes. We are more worried about the complications of diabetes. What if 1/5 of them develop heart problems? If they develop coronary artery disease, these are all our published studies, epidemiological studies on coronary artery disease, peripheral vascular disease, retinopathy, nephropathy, neuropathy. We have data on all of them, urban, rural, we have all the data. Even if let's take kidney disease, although it's a cardiac conference. If you take kidney disease, let's say, if you just look at 25% of people having kidney disease, this includes, of course, early kidney disease, it's 25 million people who have early kidney disease. Not all of them have gone to renal failure, but if 1/5 of them go to renal failure, it's 5 million people, which means we need 5 million kidneys. You need to do dialysis for 5 million people. That's not going to happen, okay? Because we do 10, 15,000 transplants in the whole country. So that's where Swami said, Hari, Vari, Kari. These are the main causes of disease, and quite rightly, this conference has adopted that. The Asian Indian phenotype I will not go into, but we get type 2 diabetes at a much younger age. 20 years earlier than the West gets it, we get it. Which means that heart disease also comes at a young age. I'm sure all the cardiologists and the cardiac surgeons sitting here know that they do bypass surgery at the age of 25, 28, 30, 40. When I worked in London in 1985 at the Hammersmith Hospital, when you looked at heart attacks below 40 years of age, there was not a single white man, not one in London. 70% were South Asians, 30% were Afro-Caribbean origin. Not one single person of white origin. So there's something different about us. We've been studying this in great detail. I won't go into it. But then is it due to genetics or due to environmental factors? Of course, genes do play a role. And we have been involved in several Nature Medicine papers looking at the genes in South Asians. And definitely, there is a genetic factor. But if you see, can genes explain the epidemic of diabetes? Certainly not. And this and these are also recent studies where we've shown that why we lose beta cell function, why we develop diabetes at an early age. These have all come out through the population partitioned scores. But when you talk about environmental factors, it was in an interview with Swami. Swami suddenly turned to me and he used to call me doctor. Doctor, what is the cause of increase in diabetes in our country? I was foxed. And then I said, genetics, Swami, I said. Then he said, 1970s, you yourself are saying that diabetes was not very common. Now suddenly diabetes increasing. Did all your genes change? Swami asked me. I said, I'm stumped. So I said, Swami, I don't know. Then he said, you have got the data. Your own research you have not analyzed. Please go back and analyze. He knew my data before I could even analyze it. And he said, go back and analyze it, and you'll find that carbohydrate consumption, rice particularly, is the cause. From here itself, I called my team. From Puttaparthi itself, I called. Swami is selling rice. We've collected the data. We have not looked at it. So that is the first study that we showed, where we looked at. So, of course, things have changed in 30, 40 years' time. From living an agricultural kind of a life, people carrying weights on their head, they only carry cell phones on their head now. Instead of playing in the field, we're all playing virtual football now. And our poor boys work right through the night to work to American timings because they're paid in dollars, so they make a lot of money. But what will they get at 2 a.m.? They can't get their mother's idli at 2 a.m., so they eat all junk food. And that's driving the diabetes epidemic. The first paper we immediately published after Swami said that was in British Journal of Nutrition, where we looked at Chennai and looked at the correlation between diabetes and carbohydrate intake. And Swami was absolutely right. Of course, he has to be right. So we looked at glycemic index. We looked at glycemic index, glycemic load, carbohydrate within Chennai. So everybody is eating rice. Everybody is eating carbohydrate. But if you divide that into 4 quartiles, it just goes up. You may say maybe it's due to obesity. We have corrected for it. We corrected obesity, BMI, family history, socioeconomic status, physical activity, everything, income. And yet there's a strong correlation exactly as Swami has predicted. But this is a cross-sectional study. So in a cross-sectional study, although it is large, it is still subject to bias. So we had to do longitudinal studies. Many of you know Salim Yusuf and the PURE study. We were involved with Salim Yusuf from the very beginning. So my student, Bhavadarani, took up this study when she was working with Salim Yusuf after doing PhD with me. And so we looked at the entire PURE study. We looked at 130,000 people across 5 continents, followed up for 15 years. They didn't have diabetes first, but we had the dietary history. And we found that South Asia had the largest intake of white rice. And when we looked at the correlation between white rice intake and diabetes, there was a strong correlation between white rice intake. The hazard ratio is 1.61. What does it mean? There's a 61% higher risk of developing new onset diabetes if you take more rice. Recently, we have shown, and that paper is going to get published in Nature Medicine day after tomorrow, which is one of the reasons we have to leave a little early from this conference. Tomorrow night I have to leave, because day after tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in Nature Medicine, the entire in-depth data on diet is getting released. My daughter is the first author, and I'm the last author of that paper, where we are correlating in every state what is the correlation between rice and diabetes, wheat and diabetes, oil, which oil increases the cholesterol. If you replace carbohydrate with what benefits, all that comes out in that paper, so look for it. I know Meenakshi Bajaj is here in the audience. The good news is that if you do physical activity, the risk comes down. Even if you take the rice, the 50% physical inactive people, the risk is 50%. But if you do exercise, it comes down to 16%, and you can see it's crossed the midline now, no longer statistically significant. So even if you take rice, as long as you do enough physical activity, and of course you should reduce your rice intake, as I'll show you. So this paper concluded on that. In another paper from INDIAB, my daughter did, we looked at mathematical modeling and saw how much of carbohydrate, we can't go to zero carbohydrate, we're all rice eaters. So how much should be reduced? And this will have national policy implications. So in this paper, what we did was, we looked at replacing carbohydrate with what? And how does it help? So it turns out that from the 60% to 70% carbohydrate that you're taking, if you just reduce 10% and replace it with protein, plant protein. The animal protein, you don't get that much benefit. You do get some benefit as long as it's protein. But with plant protein, which is what Swami has been saying, vegetarian diet is the best, it actually can reduce diabetes and even prevent it. In the Nature Medicine paper, we also saw what happens if you replace it with fat. Nothing happens. So fat is still bad. You have to reduce your fat intake, increase our protein intake. We're not taking enough protein. We're just taking rice 3 times a day. We don't take the grams, we don't take the pulses, we don't take the vegetarian. We don't take the vegetables. We just call ourselves vegetarian, but you're not taking the right things. Newer risk factors, Dr. Prabhakaran will be arriving later today. And as part of the CARS study, Delhi and Chennai have been looking at pollution and its risk with type 2 diabetes. And in this major publication, we showed that it's an independent risk factor. Just the pollution, the particle PM2.5 particle size is related to hypertension, diabetes, cholesterol, and to heart disease. And in this paper, we showed that. So I would like to conclude in the interest of time by saying that we have a diabetes epidemic in India. This is closely related to cardiovascular disease as well, but a lot of it is preventable. If you do simple things, if we just reduce the carbohydrate intake, fill our plate with a lot of vegetables, take a lot of fruit, things which Swami had always been saying is very good. I'm sure we can prevent not just diabetes, but heart disease as well. Once again, welcome to Prashanti Nilayam. Thank you very much. Time for questions, so we can move on if it's late. Maybe if there's 1 or 2 questions, we can take.